Many people feel that they only have two options: to either accept or deny security risks. That is, to tackle the security risk or just do without it and take the risk. But it's not an all or nothing venture, and let me posit that no matter how much you do, it won't be completely secure. Risks really must be managed. I think that this accept or deny comes from taking a short-term view of competing markets. For example, the executive director of information security at Sony Pictures Entertainment stated, "I will not invest $10 million to avoid a possible $1 million loss." I'm sure that this quote doesn't constitute the entirety of this director's thinking, but it does point to a general mentality. A view that would lead many to generalize it to this: that I need to compete against other agencies that are willing to take the risk and reduce their cost. In order to survive, I can't spend my time focusing on security. I believe that this thought is even more accentuated with some of the Agile paradigms pushing for a minimal viable product. And if Agile dictates working code over documentation, what's a priority on security here? This is not to say that we should dump Agile development paradigms. I'm a big advocate of Agile software development strategies. Rather, it is yet another issue that arises when people apply any sort of software development lifecycle, disregarding its full intention and lessons learned from previous initiatives. Just because we don't chiefly follow the waterfall methodology for developing software currently doesn't mean that we can't learn from the past. My hope is that from the plethora of information security issues making headlines, that you feel you need to focus on security at some level. Breaking headlines as I'm recording this video, hackers, which I prefer to call attackers, part of an Eastern European ring, was discovered to have stolen between $300 million and $1 billion. And while the software utilized was advanced, it was reportedly instigated as part of a simple email phishing scheme. Further, this was something that could have been stopped with the latest Microsoft updates. It was not, as they call, a zero-day attack. But you may be asking yourself, how would I even get started? Well, you really need to prioritize security, working on the items that are most likely to happen and most significant. One way to initially begin tackling this is with a risk management matrix. That is, a matrix of the likelihood of an event to happen, rare to certain, and the level of risk associated with that event, negligible all the way up to catastrophic. And then we can define the elements contained within to have a certain level of priority, low to extreme. Let's take something simple that we just talked about, say malware or viruses from an email phishing scheme. An email phishing scheme being someone clicking on something malicious within a message. How likely is it that an employee would do that? Well, I would say almost certain if you're talking about more than just a few people. And how devastating could that be? Well, it really depends on what they have access to and what their machines is connected to on the network, amongst many other things, of course. But in this example, we'll say it's critical. So is this risk management matrix perfect? No, and it's highly criticized, but it's a great place to start as it promotes discussion. I especially like how it gives more of an understanding of the whole or multiple risks together versus a myopic view of security. It also enables prioritization and keeps people on task. Now, a good way to better define this risk is to look at the acronym CASE. That is, the consequences, meaning the impact of the event, assets, that is, the assets at risk, the source of the event, and the event type. Let's consider the following: credit cards being compromised from a database via an external attack. External, meaning that it was not stolen by an employee. The consequences would be brand equity would go way down, and people would lose trust in your company. It'd have a monetary effect, dealing with notifying appropriate agencies and attempting to get new credit cards into the system. In many cases, it would even cause customers to go to competitors. The assets at risk would be sensitive credit card information. The source would be hackers, or as I like to call them, attackers. And the event type would be theft. Alright, so we've identified risks and defined them, but what's the risk management plan? Well, some like the acronym ACAT: Avoid, Control, Accept, or Transfer Risk. But I prefer a different set of terms: avoidance, reduction, sharing, and retention. Avoidance, that is to eliminate, withdraw, or not become involved. With our credit card example, this would just be not to store credit card information on our system. Reduction, in this case, we could reduce the number of systems associated with the credit card database, eliminating attack vectors. Sharing risk, by transferring it to a third party or even buying insurance in case the attack happened. Here, an option would be to move some but not all payments to PayPal. And lastly, retention. You accept the risk and budget for things such as appropriate implementation of encryption, management, and audits. Like most long-term corporate ventures, it can't happen without corporate leadership. Leaders of the company need to ensure that security is part of the culture. How do we create this spirit company-wide? It's a great question. But if we can't look internally in the midst of large security breaches that affect millions, my expectation is the government will start flexing their regulatory muscles.